Hello everyone and welcome back to my favourite room in the house. It's belting down with rain here today, which is fantastic because we haven't had rain in quite a long time. So the farmers are going to be really happy. I'm also happy to report that Mrs. Trickshot is quite happy with me because I managed to do some gardening over the last couple of days, which has afforded me the time to spend playing with my G.I. Joes this afternoon, which is always good. Today I wanted to talk to you about some figures that have caught my eye in the recent weeks and months. And they're figures from the lost era of G.I. Joe, I suppose we can call it. As we all know, G.I. Joe ran from 1982 to 1994 as the Real American Hero line. And then after that, it didn't really know what it wanted to be. In that late 90s to early 2000s period, G.I. Joe was still releasing things, but it was sort of in fits and starts. There wasn't really a unified strategy around G.I. Joe. Lots of weird and wonderful things were released during those years. And some of those figures were actually repaints of G.I. Joes from that original era run. I've got a bunch of those repaints in my collection, and I wanted to talk to you about them today. So grab yourself a drink, a nice comfy chair, put your G.I. Joe blanket across your knees if you've got one, sit back, relax and enjoy. Let's get started. Okay, I'm back, and seeing as it's raining today, I thought a good place to start would be with some winter G.I. Joes. These are a bit tricky for me to talk about because I've never seen snow before in my life, believe it or not. I am 42 years old, 43 this year, and never ever seen snow. It just doesn't snow much in Australia. Hopefully I'll be able to change that in the next few years and see some snow falling on the ground. That'd be nice. The first Joe I wanted to show you is this guy. He is Whiteout, and he was brought out in the year 2000. I'm sure he looks familiar. He came out after this guy, who was called Snowjob. He came out in 1997. Whiteout there, he was sold in a 2-pack in the year 2000 with this guy, who is, of course, Big Ben. That was a pretty good 2-pack, if you ask me. They're fantastic-looking figures. They've actually been branded with an Action Team logo, which is pretty cool. But all three are repaints, of course, of figures from the original ARA line. Whiteout and Snowjob are, of course, repaints of the original 1983 Snowjob. And there's my version there. He's a bit yellow, which tends to happen with toys that are 40 plus years old, and I'll keep searching for a nice crisp white version, but in the meantime he'll do just fine. And Big Ben from 2000, of course, was a repaint of Big Ben from 1991. Both of those Big Ben figures, I'm sure you'll agree, are fantastic figures. Quite a lot of difference with colour there. Obviously the original is all green, and the 2000 version is a bit snow camo friendly, but both fantastic figures. In fact, all 5 of them are great figures, and you'll hear me say that a lot today because I love all G.I. Joes. But that's the first bunch done. I'll go and grab some more out of the cabinet. I'll come back and see you. Let's talk about the leaders of G.I. Joe, and when we do that, the first character that often comes to mind is none other than Duke. And in the year 2000, Hasbro released a version of Duke, which is actually pretty cool. And I have him right here. He's got brown hair, which we won't hold against him, because plenty of G.I. Joes changed hair colour over the duration. But the camo repaint on this figure is just fantastic. The tampo on his arm is pretty cool, and all in all, he's a really cool figure. He is, of course, a repaint of the 1992 version of Duke, and before you go searching back through your memory bank to try and recall what 1992 Duke looked like, let me just remind you that he was supplied with a ride-on rocket launcher, which I have right here. Now, that rocket launcher was a ridiculous idea. I'm sure we'll all agree. They were doing some crazy stuff in the 90s, so it's probably a good thing that the 2000s version was supplied without it. Another leader from G.I. Joe is, of course, General Hawk, and We all are probably familiar with the 1992 version of General Hawk, who looks very much like Douglas MacArthur in this iteration. That particular figure was repainted and recast in 2002 as General Tomahawk. Now, I'm not sure why the name was slightly different. Maybe there were licensing issues or something at play. But he's a very cool repaint either way. I love them both. And lastly, another leading character in G.I. Joe is Flint. And the 1994 version of Flint is probably the weirdest version of Flint from the original ARA lineup. He's looking like he's ready to march off into the desert. Maybe he should have been called Dusty. So yeah, very strange version of Flint. And in 2001, it got even weirder because Flint was released as Rock and Roll, or Flint. I'm not sure. He was part of a Toys R Us exclusive, supplied with a really big playset, and I think in some cases he was labelled Flint, and in other cases he was labelled Rock and Roll. But yeah, as you can see, he's a clear repaint of that original 1994 version. So there you go. There are the leaders of G.I. Joe from the lost era of G.I. Joe. Okay, so it's time to show you 3 more really cool figures. Maybe I'll start with the vintage this time, and I'll get them all out. So here we have 1987 Law and Order, based of course on the great Kirk Bazigian. I've left the order in my cabinet, sorry about that. I've also left Sandstorm in my cabinet because he goes with 1991 Dusty, which is also a pretty good figure. And lastly, I have 1992 Gung Ho, who is looking very patriotic there with his American flag. Now, all 3 of these were recast and repainted in the year 2000 and beyond. I have here the 2000 version of Dusty, who doesn't really look like a desert trooper anymore, but still a relatively cool figure. Nice red beret and green camo pants there. We've also got a 2000 version of Law and Order, who has a really nice sort of colorways there with some burgundy trousers, a white shirt, and gunmetal vest. He looks very cool. And of course, Gung Ho didn't change a lot, but maybe changed for the better. He came out in 2001 with all of the similar accessories, just with a brand new paint job. So yeah, there's some really cool Lost Era G.I. Joes there. Which one's your favourite? Maybe tell me in the comments, and I'll be back shortly with a few more. It's time now to look at some Cobra figures, and there's no better place to start than the 1986 Viper, who is by far one of the most iconic Cobra figures from the original ARA line. He was, of course, followed by the 1989 Python Patrol version, and yes, I apologise, I've got the incorrect rifle there. Maybe one day I'll get a black version like he should have, but that'll do just fine for now. So it's the 1989 Python Patrol version, and the 1990 Sound Attack version, which I've kitted out with some Leonard Core accessories. Don't tell anyone, but he's a pretty cool version of that Viper figure as well. These were also repainted in the 2000s, and it's no wonder because they're everyone's favourite, and there were quite a few different versions. I've managed to pick up 3 of them, and the first of them is the 2002 version, which is this nice camo green and grey sort of setup. The legs on this one are a little bit different. I'm told they come from the 1987 Bat, which is interesting, and the same legs were used on most of these Vipers that came out in the 2000s. The next one I've got here is a 2003 version, which is a slightly darker version of that green and grey camo. And in 2006, we headed back to a more traditional sort of coloration for the Viper, the blue, red, and black colorways, which is pretty cool. So Vipers, hey, no wonder they were repainted, because they are a fantastic figure, and from start to finish, they were fantastic. We'll be back soon with some more. So I've got a whole bunch of other Cobra figures here, and if you're playing along at home, what I'll do is I'll put up the Lost Era versions and see if you can work out who the original 1982 to 1994 versions were. The first one I want to show you is none other than 2002 Skullbuster, and he's a pretty cool looking customer there. Nice purple figure with a big black spearhead rifle. I've also got 2001 Shadow Viper in the colours of my favourite football team, actually. He's black, silver and teal. And I also have the 2003 Cobra Alley Viper, of course, with that visor that flips up and down on top of his head. It's pretty cool. Have you figured out who the original figures were? Well, I'll put you out of your misery. The 2003 Cobra Alley Viper is a repaint, of course, of the 1989 version. The 2001 Shadow Viper is a repaint of the 1988 Astro Viper. And the 2002 Skullbuster is a repaint of the 1990 Range Viper. They're three really solid figures repainted beautifully in the Lost Era. I'm sure you'll agree. So here's something a little bit fun. In 1992, Hasbro released the Headman, and I have to apologise, mine doesn't have the customary gold pinstripes that he is known for. Obviously, they rub off quite easily. He still looks mean as in all black. And of course, Headman was the leader of a gang of drug dealers from the original 82 to 94 run. And he's a really cool figure. He was actually recast and repainted in 2002 in this beautiful caramel colour. There he is there. That's almost as good as the original, if you ask me. And funnily enough, for some reason, in the year 2004, Headman's torso was used to produce this guy. It's General Flag. I just picked him up very recently at a toy fair, complete with his removable hat, and he's a cool figure. Actually, they're all really cool. What do you think? Feel free to tell me in the comments below. Okay, let's talk about some more Joes. And in 1993, Hasbro released Mace. There he is there. I display mine without that strange helmet-mounted cannon he was supplied with. He was actually recast in 2004 as Steeler. Well, they used his torso anyway. Steeler, for some reason, has a much smaller head, which looks a bit weird on Mace's buff body, but hey, still pretty cool figures. Then we have none other than 1987 Outback, who is a favourite of so many collectors. He's an absolute boss, that figure. He was reused in 2001 to produce Big Brawler. This guy, as you can see, the exact same sculpt except for the head, a bit of tampo on the chest. Even the torch was supplied for plugging into his leg. And Big Brawler is a favourite among collectors as well. In 1992, the second version of Shockwave came out in the ARA line. There he is there. He's a pretty cool figure. And that complete torso and head sculpt was used to produce in 2002 Surefire, which is another cool figure, and the G.I. Joe tampo on the leg is what I like the most about this guy. So there you go. 3 more Lost Era G.I. Joes, which are pretty special. which are obviously repaints, remolds of originals. Even ninjas weren't immune to a little bit of Lost Era reuse. Here's 1992 Slice. He's a pretty cool figure. The orange version that came out in 1993. They were recast in the year 2002 as Cobra Slice. And 3 pretty cool figures. 1992 Storm Shadow, which you'll know looks like this. Very popular version of Storm Shadow. He was repainted in the year 2000, albeit as a Cobra figure in this outfit. That's pretty cool too, if you ask me. That's 5 really cool ninjas, some from the original line and some from the Lost Era. We need to talk about removable helmets. In 1985, Hasbro gave us the very popular and beautiful Crimson Guard. That was followed up in 2003 by what appeared to be another Crimson Guard. But he's actually not. See, that helmet is completely removable. It pops off to reveal Agent Faces, who is, of course, a G.I. Joe operative. It was a really cool twist on that original Crimson Guard figure, and they're both fantastic G.I. Joes. I'd also like to show you my 1986 Serpentor. There he is there, he's resplendent in his green and gold colour scheme, and he was repainted in 2005, albeit with a slightly different colour scheme, but the best thing about this figure is that his helmet is also removable. I'm going to take him off screen because this is quite tricky to do. But for the first time in 2005, we got a look at Serpentor's entire face. And he's a grumpy looking human being. But they're 4 really cool figures too from the Lost Era of G.I. Joe. In 1994, Hasbro gave us this guy. It is the Ice Cream Soldier. And despite a strange name, he's still a pretty well sought after figure to this day in G.I. Joe circles. He was recolored in 2002 as the Shock Viper. So with a simple repaint, he went from G.I. Joe Ice Cream Soldier to Cobra Shock Viper. I don't think it matters. I reckon both are really cool figures. And speaking of cool figures, this is my 1992 Destro. He was recolored in 2005 with white gloves and a slightly different head sculpt to become 2005 Destro. Another really cool Lost Era Joe. The last figure I wanted to talk to you about today is a real heavy hitter. Here is the 1984 Zartan in all his colour-changing glory. He's the dastardly leader of the Dreadnoks. I also grabbed out of the cabinet my 1990 Saw Viper with his strange body sculpt and that ridiculously oversized weapon. Those 2 figures were combined in 2001 to produce a Lost Era version of Zartan. Here he is. As you can see, the torso, the legs and the arms were taken from that original Saw Viper, whereas the head just came straight off the 1984 Zartan. The oversized weapon is also there as well from Saw Viper, but he's a pretty cool reproduction of Zartan if you're looking for a slightly cheaper way to get a Zartan into your collection. So that's all I've got to show you. That's all of my Lost Era G.I. Joes. Did I miss one that you have in your collection? Did I miss your favourite? Please tell me in the comments below. You might also like to like this video and subscribe to my channel because that helps more people see my stuff, and I need to do something with all these G.I. Joes that I've got in my spare room. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time.